let's jump in now and take a look at Metasploit frameworks modules. And this is just from an upcoming video that we were on together across workspaces. So I'm just continuing on the session from there. So all I did was I did a quick database and map scan with the TAC script here, and I used the SMB vuln script to against this target, right? So now that we already know that previously that this host is susceptible, vulnerable to eternal blue, we're going to take that knowledge that we have and we're basically going to use that search functionality within our Metasploit framework because there's different modules and features within the Metasploit framework. And then there's different bunch of payloads and exploits to use within these modules. So becoming familiar on how we search and how we begin sort of getting to the point of exploitation. So let's go through and begin searching through modules. So how do we do that? So, well, we can do that a couple of ways. We can do a quick help search. So this basically just says, hey, give me a help on how I search. And that's great. And we can sort of go through this and we can look at the different ways to search. We can search through keywords, through different options. There's, ignore parameters. So if we're looking for a specific vulnerability or a specific host, we can do the tag I for ignore. That way it'll remove that specific operating system. So if we're looking for a Windows, then we can say just tag I for, ignore anything that's XYZ. And we can specify whatever type of things that we want to ignore. So there's different options and keywords that we can use. We can use registries. We can use, modules if there's a single result that we want to look for. And keywords themselves are more of what we'll be using to search because if we are searching for specific CVE, well, we can do that, right? So if there's a description or a name or a title or even a platform or type of module, if it's an exploit or an encoder or whatever thing it is, we can search with that keyword. So we can search a CVE, we can search, anything that we really want, right? So let's do that. So here we go. So these are some examples. So we can look at search CVE, and then we can give the CVE a name and then type exploit. Or if it's on a platform, this can be a platform of not Linux. So the tag here just says minus Linux. So maybe just anything else other than Linux. So there's different ways for us to do that. So let's get going. Like let's just maybe start doing some parameters. Let's do some searching within the modules and see what comes up and see how we can start using this Metasploit framework module. So the first thing here that I'll do is let me just do a quick search and then I'll give it a name and let's look at eternal blue and let's see what comes up. Okay, there's two modules that's saying um, and that's cool, right? So there's two different modules here. It says, hey, there's an exploit Windows SMB MS17010 with PS exec, and there's some information here. It gives us the name, it gives us the number. So I'll explain what this is in just a moment. It tells us the name, tells us the disclosure date, so when this was disclosed, gives us the ranking, so how good this exploit or this module is going to be if we potentially launch it against the target. Is there a check parameter? And the check parameter just basically says, can we check this exploit before we run it? We can do it with this one. We can't do it with this one. That's okay. And then it just gives you some more information here on the actual module. So that's how we can get started with that. So again, there's aux modules. If we look into the auxiliary, so this one is an auxiliary module, and this kind of tells me already we're dealing with some sort of tool set, right? It's not a payload. It's not going to be an exploit. So this tells us it may be a command execution tool. So here, let's just read it. So it looks like it's an SMB remote Windows command execution. So that to me tells me there's some sort of command execution tool or a tool that takes advantage of an exploit to run a specific command. So that way we can begin gaining more information and knowledge around these modules and what they are. So if we need more information on a specific module, well, then we can do that as well. We can do a quick info and the actual name of the module. So let's just copy this. So if we want more information on this one, we can do a quick info and then I can do a quick paste of that and it will tell me more information around this specific specific module. So it gives us the name, tells us the module, what license. Again, it's Metasploit framework license, the rank, normal if it's high or critical, whatever the other rankings are. Provided by these are the contributors. Is there a check supported? So this is really cool when you can check this exploit. Again, it's not an exploit, so we can't check it, I assume. So again, this is an auxiliary module, more of a scanning, some sort of command execution, like I mentioned before. The check support's really a cool function within Metasploit because we can check it before we want to exploit some sort of host. And this is kind of handy when we're dealing with those sensitive environments, right? If customers are kind of more susceptible to us going in there and exploiting something without either the consent or the knowledge, of course, we want to let them know we're going to be exploiting something because something could go wrong. But this check status means it'll just go away and do something without actually doing it on the host. So if we could do this, then we can use that check support to go in and validate if that vulnerability is susceptible to that potential exploit. So a really cool feature and function within Metasploit framework. So here's a different additional information. So it says, hey, if you want to go run this command, here's the stuff that you need to enable. And we'll talk about these as well in an upcoming segment as well. So it tells us the name, the current settings, so what the default parameters are. We can obviously go in there and customize these if we want to. The required settings, so it tells you before you launch this payload, or if you're going to run this this executable of such, you're going to need some required settings. Now, sometimes you may need a password or a username. If you don't have those, chances are you cannot run that payload. So just kind of be mindful of all these things as well when we're doing our recon and we're doing our payloads and exploitation activities, because when we start beginning to exploit something, there's going to be some sort of parameter that may be required. And if we don't have that, well, then we can't do that exploit. So just be mindful of that. And then here just gives us a bit of a description and obviously some more information and some references to help us. So again, there's other potential, maybe, more references down here that we can look at it, go research the type of eternal blue vulnerability specifically to this exploit, specifically to this vulnerability, some more descriptions here. And then it tells us some other known aliases, such as code names. We could search these up and see if it's some sort of reference to this information. So let's go look at the other exploit as well. So let's just do a quick, let me just go back up and let's do a quick search for the eternal blue again. And now let's take a look at the exploit one. So let's just see what that looks like. And we can also look at, instead of putting the whole name here, we can just use obviously this little number reference here. So this reference just tells us we can use this module, or number one, we can use the auxiliary module. So we can obviously go in to look at that information. So I can just do a quick info, and then we can do info 0 or info 1. So let's do 0 now because we've already done the auxiliary module. So let's look at more information with this module. So this module is telling us, so let me just go up, the scroll is a little bit finicky. So again, some more information here on this vulnerability itself. So again, it kind of goes through the information. Is this privileged? No. Tells us what system it's running, normal exploits, so date disclosure. Here are the contributors. And if I just go up a little bit, just use the scroll bar. That's better. Check supported. Yes, it does have check supported. And then again, some more information here on the actual exploit itself. So again, what's required, what's not required, and then some information here that we're going to need to populate ourselves. So you can go through this and we start working with, becoming familiar with searching for these different types of modules. So what else can we do with these modules? And obviously we've got the disclosures, we've got the rankings, we've got some more details here. I think the other thing that I want to mention is we can also search by another term or another keyword. So if we want to search by something else entirely, maybe if there's an exploit, well, we can look at searching for exploit. So we can do a search type, and then I can just type exploit. And then that will give us a bunch of different exploits here that we can then potentially start investigating. Now there's a boatload here, and this is probably not something that I'd recommend searching for because it's going to take you a long time to go through all these different exploits. So kind of being specific on what you want to exploit. And if I just scroll down here, and you kind of see the difference between these, right? So you can kind of see the table format at the top, and it's got our details and then ranking. So excellent, great, normal. So these again, how great it's going to run if you perform this exploit. There's checks enabled and additional information. So just getting familiar with using this platform. There's different types of, post-exploitation gathering tool sets, credentials, Skype, all these different types of, here we go, multi-handlers, browser functions, exploits. There's a bunch of these, right? And you can go through these if you like in more details and understand them in a little bit more context. We can also as well, just kind of as you know this as well, is we can search and chain our searches together. So if we know a certain exploit that we're looking for and a specific type of exploit and the name of that exploit, well, we can do that as well. So if it's something that we want to look for, we can do that. So I can just do a quick search, name, and let's do eternal blue. And the type is maybe an exploit. And let's do app, let's do a client. And then it gives us these two again. So you can start searching with different sort of criterias as well. So should you want to be using different chains of searches to speed up your results and speed up your searching process, well, then you can do that as well. And this helps us obviously search through them. Again, there's different payloads, post, exploits, and we can go through these modules and find exactly what we're looking for. And that's the whole aim and the whole goal of defining this. So I've already mentioned the quick parameter to look for additional information. So we can do a quick info, and then we can use the name of the module. We can use the actual the payload option here to look for more information on this host. Now, what happens if we want to go away and use these exploits? Well, we can get into that as well in an upcoming video. And we can use the use command, right? So we can go into these exploits and start using them on how they're going to work. So let's go do that. So let's just pick that we want to use, and I'm just going to put use one because let's say that we want to use this exploit or use the auxiliary module first, and then we can go away and actually do it. So I'm just thinking, let's maybe do the exploit. So let's go use 0. Oops, my bad. Use 0. And now we go into the actual settings of this payload essentially. So it's going to say, hey, we're defaulting to this Windows interpreter reverse shell, and that's okay. We can change these different parameters later, and it'll tell us if there's no payload and things like that. So let's go in and have a look. So we do a quick options, and it will tell us the different settings that we viewed before when we did the TAC for obviously the informational settings as well. So saying, hey, there's no payload that's been configured by default to the payload. That's okay. We're dealing with exploits right now, so that's okay. And again, we can change these things later to make sure that they're correct. And what we want to look for here is that exploit option, right? So we want to what's loaded into our Metasploit framework and obviously working in the console environment. So right now we have the exploit loaded. The default of the payload is that reverse TCP interpreter reverse TCP here. So that's okay as well. And the default payload. So that's the default payload itself. We're going to change that in an upcoming video as well, so as we get more familiar with this. So this is just how to use the platform itself. Now, how do we go back? So let's say that we've don't want to use this payload anymore or this specific exploit and we want to go back. Well, that's easy. We can just hit the back parameter and we can go back into our main Metasploit framework search criteria right here. So we can just go back and do a quick search again, and we can go back to where we are. And that's how we can start using this sort of platform and continue our search, continue navigating and searching within Metasploit. So I hope you've enjoyed this entry video into the different types of Metasploit modules that we've looked at. I hope you found this useful and informational. And as always, I'll see you all in an upcoming video. Bye for now.